In 2011, in the European country of Georgia, a 75-year-old woman was digging for copper scrap to sell. The former Soviet Union had left long stretches of now unused copper cables underground, and it had become quite common for people to dig them up and sell them as scrap. The old woman was digging with a shovel, and upon uncovering a nice thick cable, thought she had hit the motherlode. So she struck down again with her shovel to begin to cut through the cable's insulated coating. Only little did she know that at the moment the old rusty tip of her shovel struck down and sliced through the wires, the entire neighbouring country of Armenia lost their internet access. She had inadvertently shut down the internet for an entire country. That's 3.2 million people, many of whom needed internet access for their jobs, and it took 5 hours for the connection to be restored. How on earth is this even possible? Is the internet really that fragile? Isn't it meant to be up in a cloud somewhere? Well, all will be answered in the coming episodes as we get into the process of how the internet came into being and how it makes our modern world possible. The internet can be described simply as a global network of connected computers. So if we're going to talk about the process of the internet, we probably first need to talk about the process of computers, given that the internet is just that, a whole lot of computers. So what were the first computers? Well, they were one of the most complex systems and processes that humans have ever tried to understand. In fact, they were so complex that our understanding of them is still not complete. Because they were other humans. The word computer was first used to describe a person whose job was to do computations, that is, to solve mathematical calculations. Before the age of us having easy access to even simple calculators, many complicated mathematical calculations were solved with the aid of books full of tables, and those tables full of numbers were produced by people whose job it was to sit and do those calculations and record them accurately. This process is obviously fraught with problems, not the least being how incredibly inefficient and inconvenient it was. But the chief problem was simply human error. These books were being used by the military to calculate shelling trajectories, and by businesses to help calculate taxes and finances. So the fact that you could find different answers when you compared different publishers' copies was a big problem. It was while reading through one of these books of maths tables in 1813 that a young Charles Babbage first had the idea that all these tables might be calculated by machinery. And he turned out to be absolutely right. Now hailed by many as the father of computers, he went on to design and partially construct two massive mechanical undertakings, the Difference engine and the Analytical engine, that through a complex network of cogs, levers and switches could solve complicated math problems accurately and repeatedly with no errors, given no failings in the mechanical parts. He even designed an automated printer that would print out and ink the results, while simultaneously preparing another bed with impressions of the results that could be immediately used for the mass reproduction of printing, removing many of the steps of potential human error that were in the current process. With the Analytical engine, he even established ideas that are now commonplace when we think of computers, such as the just discussed printer and the idea of having memory in a central processor in the 1830s. Unfortunately, he never finished building either in his lifetime due to both financial and technological limitations. His second Difference engine contained around 8,000 different mechanical parts. The sheer amount of high-precision labour required to successfully build it using technology of the day would have been incredible. But in the 1990s, a team set out to successfully build his devices by following his volumes of exact notes, and it was proven that his designs would have absolutely worked. Babbage was just too far ahead of his time, and his ideas would go on to inspire the next generation of computer designers. One of these men was Herman Hollerith, who in 1890 solved a huge problem for the United States Census Bureau. Their problem being that as they approached the 1890 census, it was estimated that due to population growth, it would take them 13 years to compute all the data using traditional means. A problem that becomes even bigger once you add in the small detail that they were required to take a census every 10 years, meaning they wouldn't even have the results of the 1890 census together by the time the 1900 census would need to begin. Not great. If only there was some kind of a system that could be built that could collect, compile, and accurately calculate masses of data faster than a human could. Fortunately for them, just such a system had recently been invented, their salvation coming in the form of the Hollerith electric tabulating system. Hollerith's key breakthrough was the implementing of using punch cards, a concept that Babbage had already proposed for his analytical engine around 60 years earlier. The card would have various data points laid out in a grid, and if a hole was punched through, it would indicate one response. If there was no hole, it would indicate the other. As a simple example, a hole punched could indicate male, no hole, female. This card with its various punched holes would be inserted into his tabulating machine. Metal pins would lower down, and in the parts of the card where there was holes, an electric current would flow, activating an electromagnetic switch that would turn a mechanical counter up by 1. Hollerith's tabulating machine ended up completing the census in just 2 years, 11 years faster than their estimate, and as a result saved the US government an estimated $5 million. Demand for his machine exploded globally, and he would go on to add an automated card sorter, removing the need for the manual inserting of cards. It didn't take long for people to realize that this system could be used for so much more than censuses, and in 1911 his firm merged with 3 others to become the Computing Tabulating Recording Company. That would soon be renamed International Business Machines Corporation, now known as IBM. Incredibly, Hollerith's punch card system would remain the dominant form of data input for computers all the way into the 1950s. But while this new process was comparatively lightning fast compared to what had come before, it had limitations, which demanded new innovations to change the process. Next episode, we'll move on to discuss the transition from mechanical computers to electrical vacuum tube computers, then to the transistor that opened the doors to the modern world of network computing we live in today, where a little old granny in Georgia can accidentally bring an entire country to a near standstill with just her shovel.